Can you guys hear me well before I start the recording? Yes. Okay, perfect. Let me start the recording.
Recording in progress.
All right, amazing. Welcome. Good morning. It's so nice to see you all. And I'm super excited about today's energy. Let me write it down in the chat. Today, we're being carried by the energy of 4 Eek. And I cannot wait to share all about it with you. But as we do every single morning, I'll start with doing the invocation with cacao, setting intentions, and then we'll start in 1 minute. So I invite you to join me, and then we will get started. All right, perfect. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the energy of Ik. Today, we're being carried by an energy that's very important. The Nahual of Ik is, I think, one of the most beautiful Nahuales that there is. Ik is connected to the energy of the hummingbird. And the hummingbird in the Maya tradition is a very sacred bird. Every time you see a hummingbird, it represents something very beautiful and very profound. Ik is the energy. Sorry, by the way, my throat hurts today, so hopefully it will be okay. But if I cough a few times or if my voice sounds kind of funny, yeah, well, wish me luck. So basically, Ig is connected to the energy of this beautiful bird that has all of these life lessons to show us. For example, the hummingbird is a very unique bird. We've been talking about birds already a few times, the quetzal, the condor, the eagle, for example. Also in the story of Xibalbá, I mentioned, for example, the owls. And every single bird in the Maya tradition has a very profound significance. Eek, however, is a very peculiar and unique bird because hummingbirds are, first of all, I don't know if you've ever noticed, probably you have, how quickly they flap their wings, right? In addition to that, hummingbirds are the only birds that have the ability to fly not only forward but also backward to the side. They can basically move in every single direction as they're flying. They can go to the back, they can go to the left, they can go to the right, they can go to the front. Other birds cannot do that. Other birds can only fly towards the front. This might not seem like a super important detail, but when we're talking about ik, actually, this is a very profound detail because ik is connected to the energy of a very important character in the Maya tradition. And the name of this very important character is Sununija. Sununija is one of the guardians of all of the directions. I don't know if you guys remembered how in the last few days I've been mentioning corn quite a lot. So first I talked about corn and how important its agricultural system is. In addition to that, I talked also about corn and how the Mayas believe that they are people made out of corn. This is the humanity of corn. And there are 4 colors to corn. Those 4 colors represent the 4 corners of the earth, the 4 cardinal points. So the east, the west, the north, the south. They also represent the 4 elements. And every single one of those 4 corners of the earth or those 4 corners of the universe has 2 guardians, a man and a woman. The men are known as the Balamev, and their names are Balam Kitse, Balam Akav, Ik Balam, and Mahakutah or Mahakutah Balam. And the women are known as Sununiha, Chomiha, Kakishaha, and Kahapaluna or Kahapaloha. Today, I want to talk a little bit about Sununiha. Sunun means hummingbird. Ha means water. So if we translate her name is Hummingbird Water Woman, I guess. Sununiha. As we just established, Ik is the energy that's connected to the hummingbirds. Sununiha is one of the guardians of the earth. She has this really wonderful abilities, and she teaches us some things about ourselves and about humanity and about the powers that we have as human beings. Sununiha is connected to the energy of the air, and so is Ik. You know how yesterday that was Imosh, we talked a lot about water and the importance of water because that's the element that was represented by Imosh. In the exact same way, today, Ik is represented by the energy of the air, which we will talk about in a moment. But in addition to representing the air, Sununiha has this very special gift, and she's the one out of all of the guardians of the earth that knows how to travel between different dimensions. So my dad always told me that his teacher told him that in the Maya tradition, there are 400 dimensions in every single direction. But I don't know if you guys remember during Zikin that I mentioned this already, but 400 is a very important number in the Maya tradition because when we look at the Popol Vuh, when we look at ancient scriptures, when we look at the oral tradition, every single time that the Mayans use the number 400, they don't always refer to literally the number 400, but they sometimes use the word 400 in the exact same way that in modern times we use the word thousands, right? So I'll give you the same example I always do. If I say there were thousands of people at the concert or there were thousands of people in the stadium, that does not literally mean there were 1,000 people. It could mean there were 2,000. It could mean there were 10,000. It could mean there were 18,000. We don't know exactly what it refers. It just means a lot, right? So in the oral tradition of the Maya, it is believed that there are 400 dimensions in every direction. That doesn't literally mean 400. It just means thousands of dimensions in every direction. And the one who has the power to travel between dimensions is this incredible woman, Sununiha, the hummingbird water woman. So basically, the idea is that Ik is one of the energies that reminds us about the importance of being able to activate our spiritual side and to be able to silence the mind and to be able to travel, let's say, between dimensions. In the Maya tradition, and you can even read parts of this in the Popol Vuh, this whole thing about traveling between dimensions is a very profound topic. So, for example, we talk sometimes about Pashil Kayala, which is kind of debated topic, what Pashil Kayala actually refers to. Pashil Kayala, some people say refers to certain areas of Guatemala. Other spiritual leaders say that it refers to different dimensions, but Pashil Kayala in the Popol Vuh is the name of the place where corn came from and where certain fruits came from. When you translate that word, it literally means the place of many colors, the place of many. And so when it is described, it is often referred to as a place with a lot of fruits, with a lot of flavors, with food that when you eat it, it tastes so good because you can pick up a fruit from a tree and it just tastes so incredible. When you look at the nature, there's all these flowers, there's all these colors, there's all these fruits, there's all of these things. And that's the place where corn comes from, according to the Popol Vuh. As I said, it's debated what that actually means. Some people think it's certain parts of Guatemala, but certain spiritual leaders think that Pashil and Kayala are different dimensions that are very easy to access from our own dimension. And so in that sense, the Mayans kind of believe in, how can I explain it? The Mayans kind of believe that there's different planes of existence that we are surrounded by. And in the same way that I finished our session yesterday when I was really excited talking about the universe, reality, existence, energy, and all of that, the Mayans also believe that we can transcend our plane of existence if we are able to master our own mind and to be able to visit those different dimensions. The ability of Sununiha or of the hummingbird is to be able to do that. Why? Because it doesn't just fly towards the front, but it can fly in any direction. So hummingbirds teach us in that sense that there isn't only one single path that we are able to follow, but there are many different paths in the spiritual way, that those different paths refer to different dimensions, but also we're going to talk about a few different things, which are not just dimensions. Uh, Let me switch to the topic of the air, right? So yesterday, we talked about how sacred water is in the Maya tradition. Today, we must talk about how sacred the air is in the Maya tradition. In the Maya tradition, the four elements are all incredibly sacred. And the reason for that is that all of those four elements are the givers of life. Mm. So, for example, we're not able to exist without the four elements. As I said yesterday, if you just took the water away, everything would die. Like we would die, the animals would die, the plants would die. If you took the air away, we would die much quicker than if you took the water away. How long can a human being, for example, survive without being able to breathe? Probably just a few minutes, right? And so the air, in that sense, is this profoundly beautiful element that we cannot see, but we can experience, we can feel. The air is sacred. And in the same horrible way than that we're doing it to water, we're also polluting the air in the modern day times, unfortunately. And so today is a day, first and foremost, to remember the sacredness of the air, how important the air actually is, and to also be advocates for the rights of the air. Um, I met a spiritual leader once who said, we talk so much about like in the modern day world about like human rights, for example, and like what rights we have as a human. And they were mentioning how we should also talk about the rights of nature, right? There should be an entire ministry in every country that is devoted specifically to protecting the water. There should be an entire ministry in every country that's devoted specifically to protecting the air. The little amount of attention that we pay to nature and to the natural resources that literally give us life is very worrying in this modern times. And so the air is obviously essential for our lives. It's one of the givers, one of the creators of existence, one of the enablers of life and existence. And so today I invite you in that sense to honor the earth, to think about, not the earth, I'm sorry, the air, to honor the air, to think about how important the air is, the air that you literally breathe, that's inside of your lungs, that literally gives you life. We think so little about these elements when we should think about them so much. In the Maya tradition, there is a practice, and that practice is that every single morning, when you wake up, one of the first things that you should do, and this is practiced already for thousands of years, light a little candle and do a little ritual in honor of gratitude that you should have for existence. So in the Maya tradition, people wake up and with the first rays of sunlight, they light a little candle and they say, Matiosh ukushkach, which means thank you to the heart of the sky. Matiosh ukushuleo, thank you to the heart of the earth. So already we're thanking the sky, outer space, and then we're thanking the earth for the life that it gives us. Then we're saying, Matiosh, balam kitse, balam akav, ik balam mahakutah, Matiosh kahapaloha, chomiha, sununiha, kakishaha. And those are the guardians of the four corners of the earth. So in that way, we're saying thank you to the four cardinal points, to the four corners of the earth. Thank you to the sun, to the magma, to the fire that brings us life. Thank you to the earth because it's a giver of life. Thank you to the air because of the air that we breathe as a giver of life. And thank you to the water. And in that way, people keep going and your invocation can be as long as you want. And by the way, that's usually the invocation I make with cacao. It's just a thank you to everything in existence. And it's part of the Maya tradition to just say thank you every single morning and to also say thank you every single evening before we go to sleep, to light another candle and say thank you because I went through another day. So yet again, thank you, heart of the sky. Thank you, heart of the earth. Thank you, earth. Thank you, water. Thank you, air. Thank you, fire. Thank you, everything in existence, because I'm still alive. And I think it's such a beautiful tradition to do that because number one, gratitude is really important. But number two, I feel like in this modern day world, we really started to underestimate things that are really huge and really big and really important for our life. And the air is one of them. And when we stop feeling gratitude, we become very similar to the people of wood who also were not able to feel gratitude. And then because of that, they forgot, right? They forgot to say thank you, but they also forgot about their own heart. They also forgot about their own spirit. And somehow, in the Maya tradition, we have this big warning that always leads us back to, if you forget about gratitude and spirituality and all of that, you lose connection with nature. And when you do that, you just start destroying it. And I think it's so funny that all of this story is like the one of the people of wood that I mentioned a few days ago. I can't remember which energy it was when I told you the story of the people of wood. I think it was a fool. Um, so, but you know, I always thought it's so interesting that this story is so relevant nowadays, but it was literally written thousands of years ago when none of the things that are happening today were actually happening back then. And still, the Mayans were able to figure out thousands of years ago, if you lose sight of your gratitude, of your spirituality, of your heart, if you become too hard, if you become too centered only in the mind and nothing else, then you destroy the planet. And I kind of think that that's an interesting thing that the Mayans figured that out so long ago. And that story of the people of wood has become more relevant today than at any other point of history, because unfortunately, that's exactly what we're doing, right? And so Emosh and Ik to me are two beautiful energies that are followed by each other. Yesterday was Emosh, today is Ik, and they give us a reminder of something that might seem like not super profound, not super important at first sight. Like, oh, let's think about the water, let's think about the air. And in the modern context, we're like, oh, okay, whatever, not that interesting to think about those things. But the reality of it is that those should be the things that interest us the most, because those are the things that actually determine whether we continue to live, whether we continue to exist or not. So those are big things, they're important things. So today, if you can, make sure to devote some time to expressing your gratitude to the air that you literally breathe, to the wind that kindly and in a most loving way touches your face and that brings you literal existence, that brings you literal life. Mm. So that's one of the aspects of Ik, to feel gratitude towards the air. But it gets really interesting once we start talking about the air, because there's a whole entire tradition in the ancient Mayan world that's devoted to thinking about the air. I invite you right now to open some browser and go to Google and quickly Google ancient Mayan windows and then go to images. And then you're going to see what comes up. So something really interesting is that Ik, if you look at the glyph of Ik, so you can also just go to the mayanwisdomproject.com and then you can check out the Mayan calculator and it'll show you the energy of the day. And then you can see the actual drawing of the glyph of Ik. And the glyph of Ik looks kind of like the letter T. Um, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but you can check it out online, right? So it looks kind of like the letter T. It has this shape at the top and this shape at the bottom, and together it forms like a bubbly letter T. If you also take a look at ancient Mayan windows and ancient structures, the windows look exactly the same as the glyph of Ik. As a matter of fact, the glyph of Ik, the representation of what it is showing is it's literally an ancient Mayan window. Obviously, that's connected to the air, a window, right? Because that's like the wind flows through the windows. But in the very ancient world, windows in ancient structures and ancient houses were not shaped like windows in the modern day time in modern houses. If you look at the windows in your house, they probably are either a square shape or a rectangular shape, right? In the ancient Mayan world, windows were shaped like this T letter shape. And the reason for that is when the air flows into the house through the T letter shape, the air comes into the house every time it blows in a spiral mode. That T letter shape forces the air to flow in a spiral mode. When the air flows in a spiral mode, the house has way better ventilation than when the air just flows like straight in. It forces it to go in a spiral and that ventilates the entire house. But that spiral motion in the air, similarly to how we talked about yesterday, the water in the river also flows in a spiral motion. When the air flows in a spiral motion, it actually has the ability to purify itself. And so basically, the air can clean itself in the spiral motion. In that way, the ancient Mayan houses were optimized to give us cleaner air to breathe inside of our house and to also give us better ventilation, which is, I think, pretty cool, actually. But also, the ancient Mayan windows were trying to imitate the exact same thing that happens in nature. So if you go to a jungle, or if you go to a forest, or if you go to, a body of nature, there are different kinds of trees. If you look at like a place that's really diverse in plants and trees. So some trees, for example, if you go to the forest, let's say, or to the jungle, um, are high trees. Other trees are medium-sized trees. And then we have like smaller trees and also a lot of bushes. Those three levels of altitude that trees have or of height that trees have, when the wind is blowing, it creates the exact same motion for the wind. When we have like that biodiversity of three types of like heights of trees, it creates the exact same motion. The wind doesn't blow straight. It actually, like goes through the leaves and through the trees and whatnot. And it actually starts also flowing in a spiral motion, which enables the wind to actually purify itself and to clean itself. And obviously, trees play a hugely important role in the connection to the air and all of that as well, obviously. So nature, the Mayan windows, what they're doing is they're trying to imitate what actually happens to the wind in nature, and which is it purifies itself thanks to that spiral motion in which it flows. So that's one thing about the air in nature, about the wind in nature. The other thing about the wind in the Maya tradition is it represents something really interesting. What the air or the wind represents in the Maya tradition is the mind. So interesting. In a moment, you're going to see why that's so interesting. Because, well, first, a little recommendation or exercise that you can do today. One of the things that is a good physical representation of the wind is incense. So on days that are eek is a very common exercise to do practices with incense. So to cleanse your house with incense or to cleanse yourself with incense, to just pass incense around as a way to cleanse and to purify your home or to purify yourself or to purify the people around you with incense. So if you have incense at home, today would be a good day to take it out, to light it, and to do whatever is your favorite practice with incense because, the smoke of incense blows thanks to the air, to the wind. And in that way, that's a representation of that. And that's an exercise that we can do during Eek. But we can get deeper into thinking about what that represents for real. And if you think about incense, is a practice, passing incense around is a practice that reminds us about like
cleansing, right? It's a practice that is very soothing. Like as you smell it, you're like, it's almost like meditating. You're becoming conscious for a moment. You're setting intentions of cleansing yourself, of cleansing your mind for a moment, or of cleansing your house. And in the Maya tradition, what not what incense, I'm sorry, what wind comes to do or what air comes to do, today is the day of purifying ourselves. The wind, and it's so funny. It's like that song, winds of change or whatever. In the Maya tradition, they always call wind the wind of change because the wind can come and blow away all of the old things, all of the things that we no longer need. So today is a great day to do an invocation towards the energy of the wind to create change in our life. And the reality is that oftentimes in this modern day world, we're also very scared of change. We're very familiar with the comfort zone, with what's usually happening, etc. And rarely do we think about change. But Ik is the energy that invites us to actually take some time to think about change. What would we like to change in our lives? Today, that's a good question that you can ask yourself. Are there things in my life that I would like to change? Are there things in my life I wish would change? And if so, what are those things? Ik is an energy that comes to purify the energy. It comes to kind of like blow this wind that takes away all of the things that are not needed, all of the things that are not necessary. Ik is a day that can bring a lot of change. And if we're not like conscious about it, that can feel like an overwhelming thing or a thing that we think we might not want. But in reality, Ik is actually a great opportunity because it is an invitation to be more conscious about it and to actually think, you know, what am I not so pleased with in my life currently? What areas of life could I be doing better in? And so how can I consciously create that change? So Ik represents change, but Ik also represents the mind. I think it's so important that Ik represents the mind, that air represents the mind. Mm, So if we look at the four directions or at the four corners of the earth, the north is the corner of the earth that is connected to the element of air. And every time we talk about the north, we talk about the mind, right? And I've even had spiritual leaders tell me that like the people of the north, the are very ruled by the mind, right? That's the race of humanity that's the most ruled by the mind. The North is connected to white corn. And so, but also I had a spiritual leader tell me once that when the people of the North don't have balance in their mind, the Earth responds with natural disasters, which I always found very interesting because I think is very relevant for nowadays, because I think that's actually kind of exactly what's happening nowadays, right? Um, so EEC teaches us about the brain, it teaches us about the mind. And so you might be thinking, what does the air have to do with the mind? Well, every ancient tradition of the world, not only the Maya tradition, but almost every ancient culture, every ancient practice, every ancient tradition of the world figured out the exact same thing. The best way to master your mind or to control your mind or to gain like power over your own mind is through breathing, right? And I think that that's so important that Ik represents the air and the mind because it teaches us about the mind, but it teaches us to not get kind of like stuck in the mind. It teaches us how to master our mind instead of getting stuck in our mind. So, Ik people, for example, people are very much like hummingbirds when it comes to their mind. They're very, very fast. They're very quick, like hummingbirds with the movement of their wings. What that means for them is people are super smart people. They understand things very, very quickly. You don't have to explain them things for too long because they very, very quickly grasp concepts or understanding of things. They're very logical. They're very, very intelligent people. But at the same time, their strength is their weakness, or their weakness is their strength. The mind for them can be either their strength or it can be their weakness. It can be their strength because of how intelligent they are, because of how big the power of their mind really is. But it can also be their weakness in the sense that if they don't know how to control their own mind, they can be overthinkers. They can create like these big stories in their heads. For example, a funny thing that eek people do is they're tripping. They're thinking about things that are not actually happening. What do I mean by that? So Eek has this funny thing that they do sometimes where they overthink what things actually mean. So I'll just give you an example to explain you what I mean. So imagine I was at a dinner party. This is the example I always give. Imagine I was at a dinner party right now, but I'm Eek. Let's imagine I'm Eek right now. And then one of my friends makes a comment, and let's say she didn't mean anything by that comment. She just made a random comment and that was it. But as an eek person, I'm like, what did she mean by that comment? And then I'm like, I wonder if that comment was directed towards me, actually. And you know what? Actually, I remember 2 years ago we had that one fight and we talked about it. And I think we're over it. I thought we're over it until right now. But that comment kind of makes me feel like it was directed towards me. And it makes me feel like maybe she said she was over it, but actually, I think she's probably not. And you know what? I think she was being passive aggressive because I think that refers to that one thing that happened. And you know what? She's probably talking about me behind my back with other people. I can't believe I didn't realize this before. And you know what? I can't believe it. How could I be so silly? She obviously has not forgiven me. And not only has she not forgiven me, she probably has an agenda against me. And you know what? And so that's kind of like a silly example, but it can take nothing and turn nothing into like this big story in their head. In that way, as funny as it may sound, eek people are very creative. They could be like fiction story writers, like they could be really great at writing like stories, books, theater plays, whatever, because they can create stories very easily. But in the weakness side of that trait, they can create stories very is their strength. It's what makes them intelligent. It's what makes them creative. It's what makes them be able to imagine things that don't even exist right now, which can be a massive gift. Or it's what makes them overthinkers. What makes them like overanalyze things that actually they maybe should not be overanalyzing, and their mind can get them in trouble. The mind is so important because my dad was talking to his teacher at some point, and they were talking about the Western world. And they were talking in simple words, they were talking about white people. And basically, my dad and his teacher were talking about like what's up with people of the Western world. Because my dad told his teacher, I've met so many people. It was like later down the journey. It was not the very beginning, but my dad was already at that point, like maybe treating patients. He was already an ahkij. And every single time he said he met people from like the States or Europe or whatever, he was like, they have always the biggest problems. And like mentally, psychologically, emotionally, they always have the biggest problems. And so one time he was asking his teacher, like, can you think of like why are people from the Western world always having like such a hard time in life with their minds, their emotions? They're always having like the craziest, most intense issues. And the teacher said, well, Carlos, that makes a lot of sense. Of course they are. And then he went ahead and said something that my dad always told this story, and I think it really marked my life. Mm, He said, the problem with the people of those places is that nobody ever took the time to teach them how to actually use their mind, how to actually use their brain. And so my dad said, what do you mean about by that? And then his teacher said, well, Carlos, look, think about this metaphor. The mind is kind of like a horse carriage. And he said, a horse carriage is a really great tool that you can have access to, because if you own a horse carriage, you can just sit on the carriage, you can just take the horses, and you can just say, I want to go in this direction, or I want to go in that direction. And then that's all you have to do. You just sit there, you direct the horses. You don't have to do any work. The horses will just take you wherever it is you want. They can help you travel. They can help you get to any place that you want to go to. And he said, but in the Western world, it's like people were never taught how to drive their horse carriage. So while here we were taught how to drive our horse carriage and it takes us wherever we want, and it becomes a really great tool. In the Western world, people just sit there and they're trying to figure out how to get their horse carriage going, but they can't even control their horses. So he said it's like they sit there and then all of a sudden they lose control of one of their horses, and then the horse runs away. They lose the horse. So they jump off the carriage, he said, and they start running, chasing the horse, trying to catch the horse. And it takes them a while. It takes them long. It's a very difficult process to try to catch the horse, but finally they catch it. And then they're fighting against the horse, trying to bring it back to the carriage. They're like, come back, horse, to my carriage. And then finally they managed to bring the horse back to the carriage. But by the time they arrive to the carriage, they discover another one of their horses has already escaped, he says. So then they start running behind the other horse, try to bring that horse back. And by the time they get back, another one of the horses has escaped, he said. And so they spend most of their day, most of their time, he said, chasing their horses. And and he said it's such a pity because they don't realize that the horse carriage is supposed to be a tool that you say to the tool, here's what I want to do next. Here's where I want to go. This is the direction I want to take. And you just sit there and the tool does it. The horses just drive you there and you're chilling, sitting on the horse carriage as you're traveling there. But if you don't know how to use it, he said, then you just spend all of the day chasing horses. And the horses are obviously a metaphor for everything that happens in our mind and how sometimes we don't know how to control our mind. And he said, so that's the problem with not teaching people how to use their brain, he said. That's the problem with not teaching people how to use their mind. Instead of it being the tool that it's supposed to be, it almost becomes like a burden, a burden of stress, a burden of anxiety, a burden of overthinking, a burden of depression, a burden of all kinds of things that it's not supposed to be for that reason. But instead of using it for the reason it was meant to be, we're just chasing our own brain, chasing our own mind, chasing our own horses instead of using them as a tool. And I always thought that this story that my dad's teacher told him was a very powerful metaphor for actually what is happening with our mind. So Adalberto, Tata Adalberto, and aquí I know his area of expertise, and that's why I'm kind of obsessed with him actually, is how to master your own mind. I love him because actually he reminds me a lot of my dad. So every time I'm hanging out with Adalberto, I kind of feel like I'm hanging out with my dad. So I spend a lot of time with him because it's always such a beautiful experience. He makes even the same facial expressions as my dad. Is a really interesting thing. But not only is he reminds me of my dad a lot, he teaches a lot of the same things that my dad taught me. And I feel like that for me, that's very special as in a spiritual leader that they teach those things. So he told me his life story is crazy. Really, it's the craziest life story. So, well, trigger warning, to be honest, he actually, when he was younger, he was really lost and he even tried to commit suicide twice. He has several sisters. His same sister found him the two times, same sister by coincidence, and she saved him twice. He had a really difficult childhood. I'm sharing it because it's not a secret. He shares it with everyone. He had a really difficult childhood. His mom was very emotionally abusive. She constantly told him that she didn't want him, that she hates him, that he was an accident, and that what a pity that he was born, like all this really horrible things. Like he just had a really difficult childhood, a really difficult life. He had to struggle with, yeah, I guess very difficult things in general. And when he was younger, those things actually really were a big burden in his mind. And he was really depressed. He went through a lot of difficulties in his life. And it was not over. Then he went through an abusive, severely abusive relationship with a woman who was abusing him very harshly as well. And then he had a crazy car accident. He was loading things onto a car, and a truck on the road, a massive truck, lost control, crashed into his car, and he flew several meters away. He fell, he was unconscious, and then he woke up like in the hospital a few days later, and he became paraplegic, and he couldn't move a lot of parts of his body anymore. And he met this nurse, and it's such a crazy story. And the nurse, and in Guatemala, in public hospitals, you share the room with a lot of other people. And he says there was a guy who shared room with him, and every night he would cry from pain. I don't know what that other guy had as an issue, but he would cry, and he was like, "Ow, it hurts, it hurts." He's like, "Nurse, please, please, nurse, give me medicine for pain. Give me medicine for pain." And the nurse was, the first time it happened, the nurse was like, "The medicine for pain is not approved by the doctor. Sorry, I can't give you anything." But he was complaining, crying. The other patients were complaining because they couldn't sleep. It was the middle of the night, and he was complaining a lot about the pain. So the nurse had enough about this guy's complaining. And so she told him, "Okay, you know what? I'm going to call the doctor to see if he can prescribe medicine for pain." And then she came back and she was like, "Good news. The doctor prescribed this injection that's going to immediately take your pain away because it goes straight into your bloodstream. I'm just going to inject you. Take down your pants. Give me your butt. I'm going to inject you." And she injected it. She injected the medicine, and the guy was like, "Oh," after 10 minutes, he was like, "What a relief. Finally, I can sleep because the medicine worked." And then the nurse came to Tata Alberto, and she told him, "I have a funny secret to tell you." And he was like, "What?" And she's like, "I gave him nothing. I didn't give him any medicine at all, actually. I was just so tired of his complaining, and I'm not allowed to give him medicine. So it's placebo effect." She said, "I just injected, emptiness or whatever, like saline solution or whatever. And now he feels no pain anymore." Tell him you're like the Guatemalan Joe Dispenza because he has a very similar story. He's like, this got him thinking. He was like, how powerful is the mind that this guy, every night he's in pain and nothing at all takes his pain away except for the fact that his mind thinks that he just got something that will take the pain away, but really is not anything, it's just the mind. So he was like, I wonder if I could use my mind to heal myself and being able to walk again. And so he spent every day at the hospital. That's why I'm saying it's funny. He's like the Guatemalan Joe Dispenza because he has a very similar story. He spent every night at the hospital picturing that he's healing his body. And all of a sudden, it was miraculous. After a few months, he was able to walk again. And the doctors told him, it's a miracle. Science can't explain it. Sometimes we have these weird cases where randomly it happens that, even though your diagnosis was you'll never be able to move again, it just happens you can move again. And so then he was like, wow, the mind is such a powerful thing. I think I just literally healed myself just by thinking that I'm healing. And so he was like, if that is so, I wonder what can I do with my mind? And then he has this super long story. I'm not even going to tell you because then we're going to spend the rest of the session talking about that, of how it was kismet, it was destiny. He just met his teachers, and then he became a Mayan spiritual leader. Then he overcame his depression and whatnot. And he always tells me, this funny story. I'll tell you a couple more stories so that I can make the point I want to make, which is at some point in Guatemala, we have all these funny things. So he was working as a salesman at some point just on the street selling some things. And one of his coworkers said to him one day, "Oh man, I'm not gonna sell anything today." And then Alberto was like, "Why are you saying that? The day hasn't even started yet. Why are you saying you're not gonna sell anything today?" And he was like, "Because I forgot my lucky powders." And Alberto was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, the market, they sell this good luck, attract money into your life powder. And every morning I put them on my hands and then I sell a lot. But today I forgot them, so I'm not gonna sell anything today." Can you believe it? And Alberto was like, "Wait, what? You do that?" And then the guy indeed did not sell anything that day. And Alberto always tells the story about how he mentalized himself. And the powders are not magical. They're not actually lucky. They're also giving like a placebo effect where the guy, by putting the powders on his hands, he gains all of this confidence, right? And then he talked about some patients, and that's actually a big warning in general about spirituality nowadays, which is the reason we started the Mind Wisdom Project in the first place, was because with my dad, we saw a lot of people selling mind wisdom in a very unethical way. And we were like, oh no, what's happening in the world? So we were like, let's better, if you can't fight them, join them, but let's actually bring real, true, authentic education so that people can have a safe space to learn about mind wisdom, and true, real spiritual leaders can benefit instead of some people who don't know anything about it. And so basically, I kind of like experienced this a few times, and Alberto told me the same thing. He had a patient come to him once. They knocked on his door, and his he had a patient, and two people were carrying him. He couldn't even walk. And they came to Alberto and they told him, you know, um, he was not feeling good. So we took him to an ajij in, I forgot what town. And she told us that she did like a reading or something. And she told us that somebody had like did some energy work on him, and somebody was trying to kill him via energy work. And then the Akif told him he needs all this specific ceremony so that I can remove this, basically this curse that they put on him. That's why he's sick. So at first they told him, we were not sure if it's true or not. So what we did is we consulted with another Akih, a different Akih, and she was like, actually, the first Akih was right. He did have some super negative energy work done on him. And you know what? If he doesn't take this away, he will literally die, actually. But here's the catch: only I can remove this curse. He's 3 ceremonies. And for those 3 ceremonies, I'm going to charge 2,000 quetzales, which is like a few $100s, but per ceremony. So you need to pay me like $1,000, and only I'm the only one who can remove this curse, or otherwise he will literally die. And so the family was like, oh my God. And then the cake was like, and actually, it's not just him who got the curse. You guys got it too. So you also, he needs 3 ceremonies, but you each need a ceremony too. $200 per ceremony, by the way. And so bring the money. And then the family was crying. They were like, we don't have money. We don't have that money. And we don't want him to die. And they were like, what do we do? What do we do? So somehow somebody recommended Tata Alberto. They went to him, and he was like, they were literally carrying the guy inside. He couldn't even walk from how bad he felt. He was like, I'm dying, I'm dizzy, somebody put a curse on me, whatever. And Alberto does a ceremony. He doesn't charge, by the way. He was just like charging for the materials that they bought is like nothing, like $20 or $10 or something. And he was like, nothing is wrong with you. Actually, he was like, nobody put a curse on you. Like, you're fine. He was like, these two people lied to you. They were trying to scam you. And then he was like, actually, you know what? You don't look so great. Let's figure out if you're actually physically ill.
And then he tried to help the guy. Turned the guy had something that was actually making him physically ill. He was like, just go to the doctor. You're fine. Just go to the doctor, take some medicine, and you'll be fine. Guy went to the doctor, took some medicine. A few weeks later, he was completely fine. And the family was so grateful. And Alberto told me there's so many times that this happens, that people come to me. And this has happened to me where literal Mayan spiritual leaders were like, somebody put a curse in you. You need to do 5 ceremonies right now. I charge a bunch of money. And so, you know, and he said, nobody can put a curse on you. Nobody can send bad energy to you, and it can affect you. He said, in order for somebody to send bad energy to you and it affects you, you need 2 people, the person who sent it and you, to believe it, that it's true, that actually it works, you know? And he said, if you don't believe in that, it's not going to happen. Like everybody can send you bad vibes and nothing bad is going to happen. People can't, if you, it's like, how unfair would the universe be if people could just send you bad vibes and you would get sick, you know? That would be terrible. So he said, you know, and I was like, oh, wow, I really, you know, I love this man. I really appreciate that, you know, because he said, I have so many people who play this story in their mind about like, you know, oh, I'm sick, or these bad things are happening, or people are sending me bad vibes, or I can't be successful. I can't do this. I can't be healthy or whatever. And he says, lo and behold, they're not healthy. Bad vibes do come, bad things do happen. Exact same thing as the powders. You know, with the lucky powders to make money right now. He says the powders don't work. What worked is that this guy believed in the powders, right? And my dad told me the exact same thing. He was telling me once that he asked his teacher, because it's a long story. I'm not going to tell it right now because we only have 10 minutes, but about, you know, in Guatemala, we have a lot of religious syncretism because Catholicism was so strong. And a lot of Mayan altars, you can also find images of the Virgin or of Jesus or stuff like that, even though it has nothing to do with like the Mayan wisdom. And my dad was like, mm, asking his teacher at some point, like, you know, if the invasion is over, colonization was over, why are people not getting rid of those images? You know, like we don't need to, we're not forced to have them anymore. Why are people still praying to things that have nothing to do with the Maya tradition but are Catholic instead? And he was like always saying, I don't like that, you know, I hate that. And his teacher said to him, well, Carlos, then what a waste if you don't like that. And my dad said, what do you mean? And he said, well, we don't have to get rid of them. But he said, imagine. And then he explained them a concept, the concept of egregores, right? And egregores is a concept of things, images, specifically, mainly religious images that people believe so deeply in, like the Virgin or a specific saint or whatever. You know, people believe so deeply in. And the guy told my dad, look, billions, not even millions, billions of people throughout history for a couple thousands of years have in absolute blind faith prayed to this image and said, I believe that this image can heal me. He said, imagine if everything in the universe is energy. He said, imagine those images, those specific saints or things, how much energy those things are charged with from billions of people who unanimously and simultaneously are like, this is miraculous, are putting that thought into that image. He said, what a waste would it be to not tap into that energy? It's like, it does work. He said, like, he was like, you know, people pray and they're like, I'm going to heal my cancer. I'm going to heal my, and then they heal their cancer. You know, he was like in Mexico, for example, there's like this thing you can do when you're like going on your knees and your knees are bleeding and you pray in a specific way. And then the miracle happens for everybody. They just heal like all these illnesses. And my dad, because, you know, he had this trauma that he came from a very religious family, he was like always thinking, oh, my aunts, they're so crazy. They're always like praying, like pray, 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 pray. And my dad always like was like, that's, you know, like they shouldn't believe in that or whatever. But then after talking to his teacher, he said, wow, that kind of explains why that actually works, right? It's not actually the thing that is working, is that they believe in it so badly, they literally heal. And so my dad told me, Sulva,
we had a conversation about this. He told me, Sulva, if you believe in something badly enough, it will come true. And it's easier for people to believe in an external thing, like a saint or an image or a religious figure or something, than in the power of their own mind. But the reality is, it's you, is the power of your own mind. He was like, you also don't need to light a candle at this time of the day specifically or something, like in the Maya tradition, you know? It's like, it doesn't work because of the candle, he told me. It works because of you, because you're taking a moment out of your day to have this experience, to feel gratitude, to set intentions, to think, I want to heal today. I want to have a good day today. I want to be a better person, you know? He said, it's not the actual literal candle that's doing that for you, or it's not the good luck powders, or it's not, you know, that religious image or whatever. It's you, it's your own mind. And he said, since that day, I never judged anybody who believes in anything anymore. I thought, how great that people believe in something, because that helps them to think, oh, I can heal myself psychologically, or I'm not alone right now. I can have this thing happen to me, a miracle where I can heal my illness, or I can fix my relationship with my partner, or I can pray for this thing and then it will happen. He said, since my teacher explained me that, I finally understood that that's beautiful and it's amazing. And I'm glad for everybody who believes in that. And that even I should tap into that power and start maybe believing in it, because it actually works, he said. And so that's why Alberto reminds me so much of my dad, because they believed in the same thing. And the thing they believed in is the power of your own mind. So Alberto always says, your own mind is your best doctor. Your own mind is your best therapist, your best psychologist, your best healer is your brain. And he said, and that's the thing, you might not be using it consciously, but it's still working in the exact same way. If you're thinking negative things and you're thinking, I'm not going to do well, or la la, you might not be doing that consciously, but it's actually working. And those bad things do happen to you, you know? So my dad and Tata Alberto always told me the mind is so important. If we know how to actually master it, if we know how to control our mind, then we can truly become the creators of our personal reality. We can, like Alberto, literally be paraplegic and heal ourselves from that. Or like the guy with the lucky powders, make a lot of sales that day because we convinced ourselves that we're going to make a lot of sales that day. Or like the guy with the injection, literally stopped feeling pain, even though we were not injected any chemical to stop feeling pain, but we just believe enough that we can stop feeling pain. And if you believe that you're going to achieve your goals, if you believe that you're really going to do those things, then you can actually have a way bigger shot at actually achieving those goals, doing those things, because you believe in it. And I've experienced this in my own life. Every time I'm like half doing something, I'm like, oh yeah, maybe it's going to work, maybe not. Let's see. It never works. But when I'm like, this must happen. I really love a quote by Tony Robbins, actually, when he says people are always shooting all over themselves. And so, and he said, it's like we're always saying, I should, that should happen, I should do that. But he said, things don't happen until you say, I must, I will, you know, and that's just true. And so Ik teaches us the power of our own mind. And the reason I believe it's powerful that Ik is connected to the wind is because even though Ik teaches us everything there is to know about the brain and about the mind, it teaches us that the key to the mind is knowing how to control your own brain, how to control your own mind. And the wind, the breath, Ik is like a highly spiritual energy, which you would not connect with the logic or the mind. But Ik is the one that teaches us that it is through consciousness, it is through breathing, it is through all of those things that we can master our mind the best. So today is a great day to do breath work, to do breathing exercises, to meditate, to know how to silence the mind, because Ik teaches us that the key to controlling the mind is know how to silence the mind, and then you can control your mind best, right? And so Ik is the one that teaches us that. And it's no coincidence that eucalyptus is the medicine of the day, because By the way, very careful with eucalyptus. We wrote it in the like little file with the ingredients list we gave you, but not every kind of eucalyptus is consumable. Some of them are toxic. You also cannot consume eucalyptus fresh. You have to dehydrate it first. So don't go exploring in nature and drink eucalyptus because it's super toxic for you. Just buy the one that's already saying consumable, like eucalyptus tea or whatever. I don't want you guys poisoning yourself by accident. But in that sense, eucalyptus is connected to eek because eek is the lungs, eek is the breath, and eucalyptus is medicine for your respiratory system. So if you consume it, it's also great, but eucalyptus is also like aromatherapeutic. So just by smelling it, it opens up already your respiratory canals. And my mom, for example, she has this like beautiful dried eucalyptus crowns that she makes and she hangs them in her bathroom in the shower. And when she takes a hot shower, the steam makes the eucalyptus release its like scents and oils and everything. And then she breathes that every time she's showering, which is a fun exercise you could try to do. But eucalyptus makes you open it makes you breathe better. It's healing for the lungs. Eek is the breath of life. Eek is the air. Obviously, we would be working on our respiratory system with the medicine of today. So that's why we mix it with cacao today. And I could keep going, but I'm not gonna. So that's it. That's the lesson. Go master your mind is so much more important than we give it credit. It's so important to think about this. And we just unfortunately never talk about this. We never think about this. Nobody ever teaches us that. Like my dad's teacher said, nobody teaches people how to master their own mind when that's maybe like the one thing, like the basis of what we should be learning. And so this today is the opportunity to think about the mind, to think about how can I master my own mind, how can I work on my own mind, and to meditate, to breathe, to do breathing exercises, and go heal yourself with the power of your own mind because it's your best doctor, your best therapist, your best healer. So that's it for today. Have an awesome rest of your day. Cheers with the cacao, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a nice day, guys. Bye. See you.